Hello and welcome to the second episode of Real Talk with a Unicorn. My name is Tatiana and I am executive recruiter in supply chain and logistics. Today we are continuing our series of conversations on emotional intelligence and mental health issues during challenging times. And I'm happy to introduce Andrea DeSaint. It's our second conversation. Andrea is a successful executive and life coach with over 20 years of experience in Canadian corporate world. Andrea has been in leadership roles, and right now she owns her own company, Total Transformations, where Andrea devotes her time to help organizations and individuals uncover their full potential. Welcome back, Andrea. Good evening.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that introduction. I'm happy to be here.
That's my pleasure. I was looking forward to our conversation, and I know that we decided to talk about resilience today. And to be completely honest with you, when this topic came up first, I wasn't sure if we would have enough material to discuss. And now yes. I'm not sure if we have enough time to discuss everything about resilience. So I would like to ask you, what is the basic definition of resilience? I'm sure you coach people every day and you
yes
here and there. So how do you define this aspect?
So it's actually the ability to bounce back from any negative situation in your life or any challenge, to have the ability to actually go from, I'm stuck in this situation, to wait a minute, I have control. I actually have the ability to move out of it and to grow from it and move forward. So it's the ability to bounce back. It's no matter how you look at it, resilience has to do with your ability to be able to move forward from any situation. So.
And is this something that we develop while we live our lives every day? So what is the best way to develop and practice resilience, and why we need it?
Oh, it's actually at the core of everything. So resilience will get us out of many situations. So to begin with, it has to do with the fact that whenever we encounter a challenge, that challenge is often there for a lesson. It's there for a purpose. It's there to help us grow. So our resilience is actually the spring that allows us to go from, here's the challenge. Now I have a fork in the road. Do I go into victim mentality and see myself as being stuck and not being able to move forward? Or do I give myself the opportunity to open up so that solutions can come up? Because once you have the mentality that, yes, I understand the nature of the situation, but if I open up, opportunities will come to me to allow me to move forward from it. So it's extremely important to practice being resilient, because at the end of the day, it's what's going to get us through all of life's challenges. It's a matter of being able to be honest with ourselves. I always bring it back to being honest with ourselves, because we often bury things, we sweep things under the rug. But if something is a challenge, it doesn't mean that it's there and it's the end of the road. It's often there to help us grow. So if you often look back on all of the challenges in our lives, they were there as lessons to serve for growth. So it's having that awareness that those challenges are there for growth. And what is resilience? Resilience is having an open mind to move forward from that challenge. And how do I bounce back? So there's a lot of techniques that we can apply towards being able to move forward.
What I'm hearing is that resilience is basically a choice. So when we face tough situation in our life, we choose resilience over playing victim, over victim mentality.
Absolutely.
Of course, there is comfort in representing ourselves as victims, because we can get some attention, comforting, sympathy. And if we choose resilience, of course, we have to go through internal struggle. We have to develop that strength that is impossible without having support. So when we choose resilience, what else should we have in order to practice it effectively? I cannot imagine myself going through a tough time without having friends or family or some sort of support, or maybe sport. Can you name those important aspects that help us go through growth and practice resilience effectively?
Absolutely. As you mentioned, it's extremely important to have a very strong support system, whether that system is within our friendship circle, in a spouse, it could be even our children, our parents, whoever represents your circle of support. But at the same time, it's also important to identify that some people will provide negative advice, and then we can actually fall back very easily in the victim mentality. So it's important when, for example, you're facing a challenge and you're working on developing your resilience, to not listen to external voices. We have to go back within ourselves and actually find the courage to identify that right now I'm using self-defeating behaviors. It's self-sabotage. I am actually working against myself, but by putting an impediment in front of myself before I even accepted the fact that perhaps there are opportunities to move forward from the challenge. So it's basically facing ourselves and understanding that having the awareness that some of our behaviors will get us stuck and not allow us to develop resilience. So it's a matter of identifying, what am I doing now? So for example, just to put it in context, because it's always easier to put it in context, you know, you're applying for a job. And for example, you weren't the final candidate that was actually given the job. So that doesn't mean now that we're going to look at ourselves as a failure. In fact, what we have to examine, what did we learn from that opportunity? Was it the interview? Was it perhaps, do I need to actually change my resume? Or it just wasn't a fit? Because a lot of people are subjective. So it's really framing it from an open mind, understanding that certain things are within our control, others are not. But that doesn't mean that now we're going to go into victim mentality and basically have self-pity and, you know, not understand that the right opportunity will be there for us. If we shut ourselves down, we are actually cutting ourselves off from opportunities and ideas and all sorts of things coming into our path, because we're immediately giving off that energy of, there's nothing else I can do. That's it. I'm going to shut down. And that's where we need to identify our self-defeating behaviors. And this is what I do with a lot of clients is, okay, you're saying you're not going to be able to move up to manager level. Why not? Well, because I don't have the qualifications. I'm not. So people usually list off 10 or 15 things that are self-sabotaging, self-defeating. So that's where basically I identify, okay, so let's really look at this realistically, not from that perspective, but from the perspective, okay, so what do we have a choice to work on? So it's always turning it around from a negative perspective to a positive one, to empower ourselves to move out of that mindset of, I'm stuck because I don't see solutions. Solutions only come in when we keep an open mind and we say, I understand that currently this is what I'm dealing with, but if I keep an open mind, a solution will come up. Something will happen. I will get a phone call. I will come across somebody. An opportunity is going to come into my path. So it's always rebuilding from that, I'm stuck in this because, to, wait a minute, let me walk away from it for a day. Let me give myself an opportunity to rest. I will then the next day sit down with an open mind and actually see what are the possibilities. What can I do to move myself forward, even if it's a little thing, like for example, making a list. Already that puts things in perspective, and it moves you out of the stuck victim mentality to, wait a minute, I didn't think about that, right? So,
oh, sorry, I wanted to add to what you just said is, what I'm hearing is, it is very important not to take criticism and failures personally. It's important to detach ourselves from so-called failures and take some time to analyze our strengths and critically assess our performance and have honest action plan and basically move forward, comparing ourselves today with ourselves yesterday. So basically put blind anything that distracts us.
Sorry.
Oh no, that's totally fine. Put blinders on anything that distracts us from being self-oriented, because it's really hard to find strength when you take things personally. If everyone around you tells you that you're a failure and you take things personally, there is no way you can believe in yourself without external support.
No.
So to your point, that's as far as resilience, Andrea, if we choose resilience, if we move forward with that skill, what's the best way to maintain that state of mind? Maybe it's going out for sports, volunteering. What's the best way to be positive? Because it's very easy to become negative and aggressive, but how to maintain this balance between still trusting the world, believing in yourself, without moving into, I'll prove you wrong, I'll show you, you know, there is a motivation. It can be negative and it can be positive, constructive. How to make sure that when you choose resilience, you still remain humble, you remain open heart person.
It's actually very challenging. And let's face it, we're all human beings, and you know, nobody's perfect. And it's a matter of repeating the pattern to where we actually get comfortable with ourselves, to actually recognize where we are actually self-sabotaging. So that happens quite often, because it's the way we're challenged is by always having this negative narrative running in our minds, but that is actually there. It serves a great purpose, because that purpose is there to challenge us to grow. But it's a matter of having the choice. You have to actually choose to change the narrative. That is the most important thing, to actually tell yourself that, you know, I am empowered over certain things. I have the ability to move forward. I can do it. So it's always having that mindfulness to actually realize whenever, to catch yourself, whenever you're self-sabotaging, because that's what ends up happening to a lot of people, is that they stop growing in terms of their resilience, because they will stop. And it's so easy for us to actually stop and sabotage ourselves, versus it takes a lot of work and effort. It takes so much energy to actually say, no, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go for a walk, and then I'm going to make a decision. No, I'm going to go, you know,
help someone.
I don't know, do another activity. And,
or
you know, it's
helping others, because once we go through this point, we learn something that we can share, right, with other people.
Absolutely. And it's a matter of changing that narrative in our mind. So that's something we need to practice on a daily basis. It's not something that gets developed overnight. So it's just, you have to really notice your behaviors. And that's where I keep mentioning self-awareness, because we all do it. We all do it. And I'll be honest, I catch myself doing it on a daily basis. I have to coach myself. And when I don't coach myself, I will reach out to my friends who are also coaches, and I'll ask them, okay, so how do you view this? Am I self-sabotaging? Yeah, you're doing it. So we're all human beings. At the end of the day, it's a matter of understanding what our self-defeating behaviors are and what are we doing and growing from it. So it's really, and to your point, by doing certain activities to take you out of the mindset, to walk away from the actual problem or challenge or whatever it may be, and then coming back to it and actually understanding that you need to change your narrative. So whatever you're telling yourself all the time in terms of, you know, I'm not good enough, I'm not going to make it, I don't have enough friends, I can't get a job, all of these things are actually...
Right now, a lot of people are losing their jobs.
Yes.
And,
yes.
I'm upset to say that many families are concerned about what they're going to eat in a month. And
I know.
It's really, it's a great opportunity to practice resilience, but it is also a great temptation to fall into victim mentality. So what would you recommend those people who maybe lost their jobs, who are concerned about their financial? I understand that you may not have a easy answer for them, but still maybe some help in terms of the self-talk.
Of course, absolutely. So, you know, as the government, we always have to adjust ourselves based on the situation. And I know right now, it's really difficult because if you're going from making a high income to being cut down to a third of your income because the government is assisting, it's difficult. It's very difficult. But at the same time, this is the time when we don't have as many activities to take our kids to actually do. So that's a bonus. So then we don't have to spend that much money. We're not spending as much money on gas. So whatever the government is assisting with, it's the time to actually take it. Pride doesn't help in a situation like this. We all go through hardships. We've all had a job loss. We've all had something. So it's a matter of actually just being able to make things run until the economy opens up again. And that's okay. If that's what we need to do at the present time, we're to put things in perspective. So that's another thing I always recommend is put things in perspective. When we were going to work, we were spending 3 times as much money on gas. You know, we were spending this much on different things. So right now we're not. So whatever the government is providing is enough to get through things. There's a lot of subsidies that are happening, so take advantage of them. Pride won't help in a situation like this. It's a matter of reaching out. If you need assistance, if, you know, a lot of food banks are providing food, there's additional donations that are, it's not about pride, it's about survival right now. And part of
maybe reaching out to friends, maintaining that.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Take a step back. It's kind of like immigration. You come to a new country, you had, you know, good job and social stuff in your home country, and now you have to take a step back. So it's another, I would even call it, it's maybe a spiritual practice to step back and use that
absolutely
as something you can share with others in the future, right?
Yes, and help each other out. This is a time where we need to help each other out. You know, if you have something extra, provide it for others. If you know others are struggling, we need to help each other out. And this is the most important time to do that. And resilience also has to do with that. It has to do with being able, you know, the empowerment comes also from that, from opening your heart to be able to reach out to others and being vulnerable. Yeah, to your point, absolutely. And, you know, understanding that we will get past this too. This too shall pass. And it's always having that in the back of our minds versus actually going into that mentality of, you know, if I watch TV all day and it's doom and gloom, if I have that programming running in my mindset and in the background, that's going to actually work against me. So I always say, turn off the news, like we talked about last time. Don't watch the news, read it once a day. That way you're not preset for negativity, because that takes away from resilience. It really takes away, basically it's allowing outside programming versus you telling yourself, you know what, I'm going to do the best I can under the circumstances. A lot of things that we were used to go out the window now, because it's basically we can't function within the same parameters we were functioning before. Mm-hmm. So we need to really restructure. It's just like at work, restructuring, it's restructuring in the family. But we have to let go of pride, and we have to, because often that's going to stop us from being resilient. And that's something I personally had to learn as well, how to do. So we all have something, and that's part of it. It's really understanding. I will never speak to a client or a friend or anyone from the point of view of, well, this is a level of perfection you need to reach. There is no perfection. We're all human beings. We're all facing challenges wrapped up in a different package. It's, you know, and everybody is struggling with something. Those challenges are there for us to grow. If you look at them that way, you will always get through them, versus this is, I can't deal with this. So if you have that attitude already that you can't deal with it, the block is going to present itself. What you think, you attract. And this is something we need to empower ourselves with. Everything is temporary. So once we take on that positive attitude of, this is temporary, this is a challenge, but I'm going to get through it. I'm going to get through it. It's going to be challenging. Yes, I recognize that it's going to be challenging. But what is the first step I can take today? Even if it's just my mindset, even if it's just changing the story in my mind about, it's not catastrophic. Mm-hmm. We're going to make it through it. That already in itself, you're ahead of the game. So that's basically what I always encourage people is to change that mindset that, you know, right now you can't get evicted by law. Rent can be extended and delayed.
We live in the country for such situations. So basic support that is essential for normal lifestyle is definitely going to be there. So being in Canada yes. in hard times is amazing, because that's what our government is promising all of us. And of Absolutely. Course, to your point is maybe even reassessing your values, your how much you have, how much you need, what's important. It's the best time, as we discussed last during our previous conversation, to reassess what's important, maybe to review your goals and become even closer with your friends and family as a united team, right?
Yes, absolutely. Community is so important. Yes, we can't be together in the same room, but still reaching out and still talking to your family, FaceTiming, whatever it may be, it's extremely important, because it actually, you know, we're lucky now with the age of technology that we can actually see each other and talk to each other so easily. So, you know, I know myself personally, as, you know, an immigrant family to Canada, I've seen things, and I've lived through things that a lot of people have absolutely no understanding about. So to your point, we're actually very lucky here to have the necessities to survive through this crisis. So that's what we need to think about. It's, you know, we need to forget about the extra frills and, you know, all the luxuries that we had before. Those will come back. We will have them all back. They will be back, but it's a matter of right now, how do I readjust within the situation to make things work? And that's what resilience is about, is finding new opportunities, new ways to actually make it through a challenging situation. So keep an open mind.
Find inspiration in others, even if you don't see people struggling in your community, or if you can't relate to people can't relate to your pain. You can always Google and YouTube TED Talks. I really like that a lot of survivors who went through challenging times, and I know that Andrea, both of us, we've been through immigration, and every single person on earth has been through multiple life lessons by now.
Yes.
If we look back, I wouldn't trade all my hardships for anything else because they shape
No,
me as a person, right? So looking
absolutely.
around, trying to find people who went through similar struggle, right? And maybe even sharing your thoughts on social media sometimes, maybe therapeutic.
Right.
And Andrea, how would you like? How do you know that person? For example, I know when you were a hiring manager, and I know in logistics,
Yes.
supply chain resilience is a very important skill to have because we work under pressure, tight timelines. How do you
Yes.
know that the candidate you're interviewing is resilient? Uh, is there any technique?
Yes, there is actually. So you have to understand that when you're hiring, obviously you have to hire for fit. You have to really look at many different factors, but it's extremely important to actually ask a lot of emotional intelligence questions to see how the person responds in specific designated scenarios. So for example, you can't, when you're dealing with supply chain, customer service, logistics, it's basically you're always going to encounter challenging situations, whether an internal or external customer is going to be dissatisfied. You are going to be the person who's going to receive that unhappiness from that person, and you're going to have to be the one to find a solution to their problem. So to take it back to the interviewing process, I always look for somebody who can think outside the box, who's actually works great in ambiguity, because that's what, and somebody who doesn't take things personally. It's extremely important to have somebody who has empathy. The resilience comes from not taking things personally, being able to think outside the box, being a critical thinker, somebody who can pull it all together in terms of all the challenges we have. Production lines go down, trucks break down, the $1 million order does not go to the customer on time, they miss the ad, whatever it may be, and it has to be somebody who is capable of actually juggling all these things and being resilient after being yelled at by a vice president because we missed the ad, we dropped the ball. What do we do now? So it's somebody who is capable of, again, going within themselves and saying, it's nothing personal. Yeah. This is the situation. So I will ask a lot of emotional intelligence questions about, tell me about a time where you had a challenge with a customer, for example. How did you deal with it? And if the person says, to give you an example, and I've had a couple of people, this customer was so bad because, they kept yelling at us. And okay, so what was the root cause? Mm-hmm. Did you find the solution? Did you offer a solution? How did you deal with it? So there's a lot of ways, that's just one example, but there's a lot of ways through emotional intelligence questions to find out how the person bounces back. Because when we're going to drop the ball and the $150,000 fine is going to come in from all of, the large chains across Canada, how are you going to deal with it? How are you going to find a solution? How are you going to bounce back from, I dropped the ball on this? Is it the end of the world? No, it's not. How are you going to work through that ambiguity to find a solution? So it's having that open conversation. Whenever I would interview, for example, I wouldn't be as formal as most interviewers because anybody can learn, anybody can become an expert, to memorize answers to the usual questions, but that doesn't tell me if the person is resilient. How will you bounce back from this negative situation? So for example, like this with COVID, I'm sure there's a lot of delays in deliveries. There's supply chain issues, bottlenecks, you name it. How do you help the customer? How do you get back from, if somebody does yell at you, how do you bounce back from that? How do you not take it personally? How do you not get into an argument with your coworkers? So that's extremely important. So those are just some examples, but It's
Maybe
extremely important to notice.
whether we are trying to blame others. Every time we want to blame shift, that's what we have. It's like a red flag for us that
Yes,
it may be the wrong mindset, right? So
absolutely. Absolutely. So it's catching ourselves in terms of understanding the big picture. So if you have tunnel vision, it's extremely difficult to see the big picture and you don't really understand what it's about. And that's actually a detriment to resilience. And that's a very good point that you brought up, because it actually does stop our resilience if we automatically go to shift the blame, which is perfectly natural. A lot of people do that. It's human nature. We don't want to actually, it's often a defense mechanism to not dig deep enough to understand what's triggering us. B, how can I change this inside myself? And it's an extremely important exercise to do, because that's how we can grow from this. So speaking from experience, there were certain things that I've had to learn along the way as well. What is going to serve me well and what is going to work against me? So that always goes back to self-awareness, to actually analyze the situation critically, but objectively, never subjectively, because it's easy to just automatically shift the blame. So it's
unfortunately, it is very common, and you either blame others or you practice empathy. So you know that everybody is struggling through certain challenges right now, whether it's supply chain or losing customers or failing to perform. Empathy, detachment from the criticism, and it's not just for people. I wanted to start to discuss we talked about individual as being resilient. What about teams and organizations? Because they also have to have this ability to bounce back from failures, from tough competition. And I know that you trained a lot of teams and you had teams of your own. Do you have live scenarios where you were able to turn average team into a resilient group of motivated people?
Absolutely. And it's my passion, because I love to actually get people to collaborate and to work together. So I have a lot of examples. A lot of companies brought me in to actually fix the disarray that was created by previous managers, because a lot of managers basically work with the mentality of divide and conquer. That's the way they assert their position. So unfortunately, that works against what a team is. When you're working with a team, it's extremely important to get them to work together. Now, what does that mean? It means discovering how they communicate. Communication is extremely important. As a manager, you have to lead by example. So to show them the way, to, like I said in the previous video, to cheerlead. That's one thing that has to be, I mean, we have to be the example, because otherwise we can't be hypocritical when it comes to leading a team. So it's extremely important to actually open up the communication, to create accountability amongst the team, because when you're working as a team, you're working together, you're working for the team together, not against each other. So we're not looking at individuals and a lot of managers pin people against each other, and that takes away from the resilience. It actually creates discord within the team. So I've had actually quite a few teams where they were completely disconnected, weren't working together. There was no accountability. There was no support. They were not supporting each other. When somebody would go on vacation, basically, there was a lot of finger pointing. So we started from scratch, and it was about bringing everyone together to create a team charter in terms of what do you guys want to see in this team? Having an honest conversation about what works and what doesn't work. So these are for established teams I'm talking about in terms of the ones that I inherited along the way. So a lot of discord was created, and there wasn't really anything in place, and they were not given empowerment to be able to suggest process improvements. They were basically...
The fact that they were around the table talking about what they want to see in their team was already a big step for all of them, so that they were invited and their opinion.
Absolutely. Instead of sabotaging them and telling them, basically pitting them against each other, it was about bringing them together. We often, with several of them, we created a team charter to actually decide, okay, what's going to work and what's not going to work amongst the team. So then the dialogue started. And from there, we built on it, because I actually inherited quite a few teams where there was a lot of sabotaging going on amongst them. And that's because that's just the way they were used to competing against each other, but nothing was working. So basically it was about bringing them together in terms of communication, about working in unison, about actually creating, because we're all working for the same results. At the end of the day, it's just creating that awareness that when you're in a team, you work together. And some of the ones that I inherited, I had serious, pretty major problems where even human resources was involved constantly prior to me taking the teams over. There was a lot of name calling. There was a lot of issues where basically the root cause of it was because that was the way the previous managers were leading the teams in terms of creating that discord. So it was just a matter of bringing everyone together to work in unison, and then providing the empowerment and allow them to be accountable for their individual job, but as well as a team. So all of a sudden we went from unproductive, working against each other, to, wait a minute, we work a lot better together. We can support each other and we can accomplish a lot more together. So that resilience, whenever
same people, absolutely the same problem.
Yes.
But I'm glad that you made your teammates feel important and that their opinions are actually valid, and for them to see how their ideas are executed is a
absolutely. And basically at the end of the day, it was just creating and achieving them, actually, exceeding expectations. We went from unproductive to exceeding expectations with several of the teams that I worked with, because the structure was in place. They were empowered. They started creating things, and the resilience came in where we were faced with certain challenges where we were already short of people, for example, just to give a specific example of resilience. But we lost a member because the member decided to go off to pursue other endeavors. And all of a sudden we were short 2 people, but at this point the team was working together. So we got through these challenges, and it's about always working together to kind of reshuffle, how do we work together? And that's where the resilience comes in as a team.
And of course, the more they go through challenge and the more achievements they make, the more they believe in themselves. So it becomes
absolutely
quest. They want to do more. And of course, I'm sure that you supported them and you celebrated.
Absolutely. And I always say that as a leader, my biggest role is to basically support the team, empower them, develop them. And of course, the budget has to be looked after. There's a lot of juggling going on, and the projects, but at the same time, leaders need to take it back to realize that their team members are running things. They're the ones who are supporting customers internally and externally. So once you develop that awareness and understand how important it is to support your team, everything else works, even when you're short of people, you're short of resources, whatever it may be. the team is always there to support each other. And that's where the resilience comes in. And that's the most important thing.
So the team from being divided goes into the team being united and being
yes,
like one organism. All of a sudden, everybody feels empowered. Ideas come up, maybe improvements come up, and
exactly
accomplish more things with less resources. I can't even emphasize enough how important it is to be united. I hope a lot of managers are listening to this right now.
Yes.
Because it's really easy to lose yourself in achieving financial goals and blaming and keeping people accountable for things that they were not responsible for. And it's just this victim mentality. Everything that's easy usually is not productive, and things that move forward, they require some sort of work, some hard work.
Yes,
and most of our battles happen here. So that's Andrew. And if you are coaching someone through challenging times, what tools are there that someone who doesn't believe in himself or herself can use to practice resilience and to stay strong and stay firm in their beliefs?
Yes, absolutely. So when I work particularly with my clients, I actually create a script for them that they will read 4 times a day. And it's about changing the narrative. This has to do with neuroscience. As soon as you understand that everything we do on a daily basis is a result of previous programming, whether it's conditioning from childhood, conditioning from being in different relationships. Our responses are always based on previous conditioning. So once we understand that, we start to use some of the tools to be able to change that conditioning and actually opening up to other ways of being. So for example, I will write a script for them. It's a positive script to change their mindset. So if they're facing a situation, let's say a challenge in terms of finding a job, we'll use that.
Maybe someone was really dedicated to his or her work, was doing a great job, but was laid off. How not to take those things personally? Basically, being unemployed. Going back to the situation you just mentioned, how would you coach that person?
So basically, it would be identifying what is within your control right now. So did I go, for example, for unemployment? If I'm already on unemployment, then I'm covered at least. So mentally, I'm a little bit at ease, being able to focus on something else in terms of, updating my resume, not being stuck in negativity in terms of, if we have negative feelings towards being let go, we deal with those feelings first in terms of clearing those out, actually being at peace with the fact that for whatever reason, it did not work out. But we're not going to dwell on that for too long, because it's a matter of, again, shifting to making a list of what is it that I need to do to move past the situation. So people are still hiring right now, even with COVID. There's interviews happening over Skype, over Zoom. It's basically putting that in perspective that the world hasn't stopped. We still have opportunity. So it's about empowerment. It's about giving the tools to the client to understand that we can move from a situation, again, taking it back to the stuck level, to what is it that I'm in control of? So it's always making a list or whatever works for the person to make them understand that they're not stuck. So everybody has different challenges. So there's so many ways of doing things, but I would recommend that you basically empower yourself by making a list of what are your challenges and what are your expectations. So for every challenge, write down the challenge and then make another column and write down, this is my expectation, so that you have clarity in terms of, okay, right now I'm challenged with looking for a new job. My expectation is, my goal is basically to find another job within 3 months. But it's also having the reality listed, that if, for example, you can't go for an interview and it's mandatory for, you know, the final interview to be face-to-face, it's acceptance of the fact that, yes, I'm going to go through the motions, but the final interview may be in July or August, and then that's when I'm going to go for that. So it's having realistic expectations laid out.
Important. It's very important, adjusting your expectations so that you don't have to suffer disappointments and
absolutely
self-sabotage.
Yes, but it's also keeping that positivity going, because it's extremely easy to fall back into giving up. A lot of people give up. So the clients that I speak with, it's basically a matter of changing their mindset to see, we all need coaches. Even coaches need coaches.
I was about to say, good for those people who you support, because they don't feel alone. There is someone holding their hand, and
yes,
that is so important, because it's very easy to give in when you just feel unstable, when it's just you. And
yes,
I'm so glad you're doing that. It's such a big thing.
The support has to be there. It's whether it's a coach, whether it's a counselor, whether it's a friend, whoever, reach out to them and actually bounce some ideas off. But here's the trick. Only reach out to people that are positive, that will support you when you're going through a difficult situation. If you're going, because sometimes people are not neutral, they will give you their version of the advice. The problem is it can sabotage you, because you're going to actually take that narrative and believe that if they tell you, oh no, you're not going to be able to do it. Oh no, you're not.
So often, especially, you know, a lot of things you learn hard way. Sometimes you trust people and you trust their advice, and then during hard times you learn what their real attitude is, and that's also very painful. It's an addition to that pain you already have.
It is.
It's important, you're right, to look at any advice from the perspective why this person is saying it and what can I take from it.
Absolutely, because often people will project, and it has nothing to do with you. It has to do with the way they're viewing the situation. So be very careful, especially when you're going through challenges, to never reach out to people who will sabotage you. So just be aware that also someone,
right?
Yeah, and someone else's opinion is not going to make you or break you. Ultimately, you're empowered to make a decision. And that's where I work with a lot of people who basically feel that, well, my husband said I can't do that. Or, you know, my friend said I shouldn't even try. Well, wait a minute. Let's pull it back and let's bring out the empowerment card in terms of why not? And that's where I have an honest conversation, and gradually we work through it. We go back to the root cause of why, and we work backwards, and then we recreate a new narrative with the script to be able to build people up. And then once people, you know, you have to repeat it to yourself. You honestly have to get in front of a mirror, and you have to have the courage to actually say, no, this is who I am. This is who I'm going to. You're literally recreating your life. And that's where we need to understand that we're not stagnant. We're not stuck. And that's where I made the reference before, to look back on other challenging times and look how you got through it, because you can actually learn from it. what was successful, what wasn't successful, right?
It's amazing that you said when I was 13 years old, and I remember that I had certain exams that I had to go through, and I probably failed them. And then my father, who knew me really well, he told me,
Yes.
"Well, for Tatiana, it's actually the tougher, the better." So
See, like we're all different, and that's great, because I'm the same way. If you give me an easy problem, I won't be challenged. I need to give me the most ambiguous thing, because it's, it's what drives me. So we're all driven by different things, and that's what we need to basically, that's a very good point as well. We need to figure out what drives us. But at the same time, to go back to who your support system is, to be very careful who you pick as somebody who's going to give you advice.
That's really,
so
that's how you learn. That's why they call people who went through multiple hardships that they become wise and they can see through people. That's because they learned a lot of things hard way, right? So you
absolutely
start seeing your personal red flags. Even sometimes, this give and take balance. You've been listening to your friend for over a year, and now you need his help or her help, and they never have time for you. So you may learn certain things that may not be pleasant. Maybe just lowering your expectations of others can be helpful, because
absolutely that's extremely important, because we're all different. We all actually, that's the beauty of it. We're all different, and we have to accept other people for their differences. And, we have certain expectations, and I know I had certain expectations of my friends, and those expectations were not coming through. And I was sort of left to think in terms of, okay, now is it me, my reaction, or is it really that they don't really understand what I'm trying to get out of them? So it's important to differentiate our expectations, and to also understand that everybody's different. Certain expectations of other people are not going to be fulfilled, and that's okay too. And that's where basically we draw in more peace into our lives. So it's understanding that as well, because we often will frustrate ourselves with, having those expectations. And it happens in a marriage, it happens with siblings, it happens with friends. So it's understanding that we have to, it's actually easier not to have expectations, and to kind of,
it's more
gradually work.
Not judging others, not have expectations of them. And the same applies to yourself. You are not judging yourself. You are not.
Absolutely.
It's
Absolutely.
Being neutral and being grateful for any advice, being grateful for any attention. We all have rights to have our opinion. The same way you think you're right, the other person may be right. So you don't have to even go into argumentation and prove yourself to others. It's basically taking notes and revising your inner circle and moving forward without that unnecessary confrontation. It's painful because you have to reassess some values, you have to assess some friendships. It is very painful, but at the same time, it teaches you something, that it makes you more empathetic, and
absolutely
up to your experience. And I'm sure that, Andrea, you decided to be a life coach because you've been through certain hardships, and I've been people.
Yes, and that's going to be outlined in a book that I'm going to publish soon. It's just incredible, but it brought me to this point today, and it's very humbling. I've been through so many hardships, I can't even, we're going to need 3 hours to discuss them. So I'm not going to get into them, but at the end of the day, I am so grateful for every single one of them, because it has brought me to the peace that I have today. There were so many lessons learned, and I discovered along the way that my passion has always been to help others. the way life has actually taught me is by example. And I've been through enough things that now I can actually use those personal examples to frame things, just to give an idea and to really understand, because unless you have that empathetic approach of truly understanding what somebody's going through, the theory of coaching will only take you so far. So it's to hold somebody accountable for goals is one thing, but how are you going to make the person grow? And how will they actually be able to move past their self-sabotage, self-defeating behaviors? And that's where basically the empowerment comes in, the transformation. It basically helps others go from I'm not empowered to I'm completely empowered to do something about this situation. So that's my greatest joy. Just like when I used to work in customer service and logistics and supply chain, was basically if I got a thank you from a customer that particular day, my day was done. My day was made. I was the happiest person in the world. So it's helping others and being of service. So that's basically how I got to do what I'm doing now. It's always been my calling. So I'm living my passion, and I, you're living yours. I see you're super happy.
It's amazing how life lessons actually humble us to the point where
yes,
the purpose of our life is to serve others and help them find fulfillment. I think
yes,
the nature of human life, to learn certain things, to become a better character,
yes,
to shape ourselves through the hardships, and then get to the point where we gained enough experience and knowledge to share it with others and be with them, and more than
absolutely
that, empathy. That's, I think, what else can be more important than that? And
that's that's the greatest thing. I mean, it's and for us to be able to get to this point with all of the challenges that we've gone through, I think that we can definitely enable others to follow in those footsteps. So that's the greatest thing in the world.
Andrea, thank you so much for your time today. I think
You're welcome.
a very interesting conversation. I personally found a lot of comfort in that conversation, and I hope that our viewers and listeners will find support and comfort in that as well, because sometimes just acknowledging the fact that you're not the only one suffering. We all face disappointments.
Absolutely.
To turn their backs on us. It happens everywhere, and the fact that you're not alone in going through this struggle is essential to practicing resilience and to becoming a better human being in the future, and sharing your findings and experience with others. And there's an amazing
yes
that you often don't know how strong you are until being strong is your only option. So
absolutely absolutely
amazing. I thank you again for your time, Andrea, and
you're welcome.
Perspective on resilience. We will definitely get together at some point in the future to discuss more mental health related topics. Thank you for your time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.